In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how we can use the specification to help us revise as part of our How to Revise video series. So the first thing we need to know is what is a specification. This is a document that is produced by the exam board, and in this document, essentially it points out some key stuff. One of the things that is most obvious is it tells you all the content that you're going to need to learn for that particular course. It says the whole curriculum. I've given an example here on the right-hand side of just the top section of the specification for power and borders on the OCR A-level geography spec. They'll also tell you what you're going to be assessed on. So often talk about assessment objectives, which would be partly knowledge, partly application of knowledge. And it would also talk about skills and the command words that are going to come up in the exam. So essentially, it gives you everything that you will need to do well in the course and the exam. We can use this information to help us revise and check our knowledge. The most obvious way that we would use a specification is simply as a checklist. So as you go through the content you are learning, as you are revising it, you would simply tick it off. I would recommend a color code or traffic light system rather than just ticking it off and saying, yeah, that's completed. As you go through initially, say how well you think you know it. So if you think you've mastered it, give it a green. Partial knowledge, but maybe some gaps on orange, and then red for poor or don't know at all. And I've shown here on that bit of the spec that the definitions I know really, really well, so I've given it a green, I've mastered it, but maybe there is some bits of the second bullet point that I have gone through that I don't know as well. And so all that says to me is I need to go back and review that bit to truly understand the full course. So a checklist is the most obvious way we would use it. What I would do next is I could also use parts of the specification as a starting point for revision for some sort of retrieval practice or mind mapping. So here, what I've got is part of the spec, and I've taken just one of the subtopic headings. So here, above the actual content, it says, what are the contemporary challenges to sovereign state authority? That is a big question that I could help with my revision. So what I would actually do with that is before I look at my notes, I just look at that heading, and then I'd use that as a prompt to dump as much information as I can on a page in this form of a mind map to see what I actually know on that topic. So I've done this as an example. I've literally just taken that question, contemporary challenges to the sovereign state, and I dumped as much information as I could in a couple of minutes. This is an example. And then once I've dumped the information, then I would look at my notes. So I'd go back and look at either a textbook or an expert source to see how much I actually knew about that topic. And I could then grade bits of it. So I could see all this stuff on the right-hand side. It's very, very good. It actually links to the course. I've been able to link the ideas very well. So I grade it very highly. What I've actually done on the other side is I've mixed in some information for another bit of the course. And what's useful about doing this is it tells me what gaps in my knowledge are and what I need to actually review. So the TNC stuff is quite secure, but there's that whole other section that I didn't get any information on, and I made some mistakes, which shows I need to go back over that again. So use it as a checklist, use it as a starting point to jumpstart our revision. And those are the first two ways. The third way is to link to exam questions and then start practicing them and hopefully create our own. Again, I looked at an old exam paper and I found this question, it's an 8-marker, which talks about EDC case study, examine the impact of migration on its economic development. That wording was interesting to me because it's exactly the same wording they use in the exam paper as the specification. So once I know that, everything that I am doing with the specification is directly linking to the exam questions. Here, to prove that it exactly links up, the exact wording in the specification says the impact of migration on the EDC's economic development. So once I know that, all I might have to do is change some of the words to create a question that maybe hasn't come up yet, but could come up in my next paper. So all I've changed here, I've taken the exact question, but the only thing I've changed at the end is the word political stability. Where have I got that word from? Well, that word is in the specification. I could have used the word social equality, but I could essentially make myself questions and then practice answering them as part of my revision, to practice applying the knowledge, which is what I'm going to have to do in the exam. So I've used it as a checklist, I've used it as a starting point, but now I'm linking all of the knowledge that I know to actual exam questions, and then I'm going to practice them. I can also create my own questions based on what the spec is telling me in terms of wording. The last way is to make sure that we understand the command words. We know that the knowledge is going to come from there, but if the command words are in the specification, we need to make sure we understand how to use them to be able to apply the knowledge effectively. Some people don't spend any time doing this. This is from the OCR website. It tells you exactly what the exam board is looking for, which means that you can't have any potential problems if you actually go and look at what they're asking you to do. So those are the top 4 ways I would use the spec. There are probably other ways you could use it, but I think those would help you to actually make sure you've covered all the content, that you are using the right command words, and that you're also applying the knowledge to actual exam questions by using the same wording.